Hi everybody, we're now live. Sorry, we're running a few minutes behind. I looked at the time and went, oh crap, I'm supposed to be live right now. Totally my fault. But I just wanted to touch in and say hi. This one's not going to be super long. I brought Hippo Guider. I really like his material. It reminds me of like, do you remember those like little squishy beanie babies when you were a kid that you could just press? So soft. He's probably my favorite. I like his little spiral. Ooh, Uzumaki. This week what I'm doing is, I don't know if you've been on the Hell's Gate fan page, but if you go to Hell's Gate series on Facebook, you'll see that we have a fan page dedicated to the book series. And there's more plans that are going towards Hell's Gate. It's not just going to be a book series, it's also being shifted right now into an audiobook, and it's also going to be a graphic novel later. But there's also some works with film and whatnot, and we'll get into that later. That's going to be more 2018. For this year, we're actually planning on doing an opening on October 13th. Now, this hasn't been confirmed yet, but suffice to say that it's going to be a very interesting book release, and I can't wait to share with all of you what's going to happen. I'm talking with the owner right now, and he's excited, and I'm excited, so we'll be talking about that later. And what's going to happen with the book release for book 2, which is Resurgence. We talked about the release date last week. This week, I'm not going to get into too much depth with writing. I've actually been suffering an illness for about 3 days or so, and it's finally clearing up. You can hear I'm a little snotty. But I'm finally starting to feel better. It's moved from here to now, like here. I can feel it right now as I'm talking. This week I wanted to talk about one of the most important things you can do as a writer, whether horror like myself or thriller or what have you, whether you like fantasy, sci-fi, even just nonfiction. You need to have an outline of not only setting, world building, you need to have a character outline. And why that's so important is it keeps you on task for each character's profile. You can refer back to those outline notes about who the character is, how they would react to a certain situation, and their motivation. Their motivation is something that a lot of authors lose in stories I've read. You know, all of a sudden they're behaving in a way that just isn't like their character would behave. Now, obviously people change, and that's perfectly fine, but you need to have that epiphany with that character and why that character is now motivated to do that. Say if your character is motivated by wealth or power, they're not going to make decisions that wouldn't help benefit them in that way, if that makes sense. If their motivation is love, why would they make a choice or decision that's only about wealth and material? You really have to take a look at your character, and though you might not like to have to do something to your character in a story, you have to make it make sense for the reader or the viewer, like in film, right? Stay true to that, and you'll have less people upset with your work. So always make sure that you set out a goal for each character and write outlines for those. So you've got your character outlines. Yay! Now you need to figure out your world building, and which is basically kind of like setting, but slightly different. World building helps figure out what sort of world you want your character to be in. Is it dystopian? Is it, the apocalypse? Like, what do you want to do with that? Make sure you outline all of that before you begin writing. A lot of people like to just dive into writing, and honestly, if that works for you, great, but understand that there's going to be a lot of editing. And any editor will tell you that the purpose of getting a book to edit it, it's to have as minimal edits as possible. And just out of courtesy for that editor, you know, just make sure you've got your continuity down. You know, continuity issues are huge with new writers. If you go through all of your writing, you'll notice, hey, I've mentioned this character was like 34 2 years ago, and now all of a sudden they're like 30? What? You need to make sure that you've gone through and at least done a first draft edit before sending it off. So outline and self-editing, and there's some awesome free editing software out there. I think Ginger is pretty decent, and there's a few others. There's one that used to be free, but I think they charge now, so I'm not going to mention them. Yeah, so that's just extremely important, is outlining everything. Your character outline, your action, so outline and highlighting what you want in each book to happen. Because as you start writing those scenes, sometimes we just get caught up in that and we lose focus of what the book is supposed to have happen by the end of it. So make sure that you've met that goal, and make sure that along the way you've got the conflict down, you've got, you know, events that spur the next events in the book that makes sense to get to that final ending you want the reader to reach. Especially if you are writing a series. I've read that some authors write series, and what they first thought was going to be a trilogy ends up turning into like 11 books. So if you know you're the type of author to ramble, don't initially tell folks how many books you're going to release. You probably should sit down and outline all of that beforehand. So make sure that, you know, like I'm saying, that outline is imperative, because now you know roughly how many books you're going to be putting into that series. A lot of fantasy authors like to write a lot of books. I can be guilty of that, but I have told myself that Hell's Gate will be a trilogy, and that's how it's going to be. So, that in mind, I wanted to touch on what's going on with Hell's Gate currently. We're actually doing I am hiring a model. I'm looking for someone that's going to be Asian or half Asian, half Asian, because Celeste in the main series is actually half Asian. And I would prefer someone of Japanese descent, but it's not imperative. So please only do serious applications. I've gotten a few this week that were a bit questionable. So just make sure that you actually are wanting to do this. This is a paid position. So please only send serious applications, and please adhere to my description. I've actually included a Pinterest image board of what the character is like in the Hell's Gate application section. So apply for that, and you'll actually get to be in my Hell's Gate poster for the release in October. As far as the other contest I'm running for Hell's Gate, I'm going to start posting for that today. I got everything set up this week, and I'm going to post details about what I'm looking for the short story submission. All of it will be outlined in that post, so please read it, because I will very much throw anything away that doesn't meet the guidelines. So just be aware of that. Anyone that submits to publicators and publishing houses should follow this practice. So just make sure you read and send those in, and the winner actually gets a published piece. in my short story collection. So thanks so much. Have a great Sunday, guys, and see you next week.